Oh, Shaka was gonna say it again. Hey guys, it's me, Moo. How are you? It's been a while. Unfortunately, I have been in a reading slump, but I did read one book in April. Tender is the Flesh. Now, if you read this book, you understand why I'm kind of terrified and a little iffy of meat. Yeah. So let's get into it. Animals around the world had contacted a deadly virus. And if people had consumed the meat of cows, pigs, chickens, they would die of that virus. A lot of people went out and started killing all these animals, and a lot of people were forced to either go vegan or eat one another. Cannibalism was legalized. So we find out that Marcos works at one of the processing plants, and in there, that's where they slaughter the humans that were genetically created for consumption. And I call them special meat, but I think in the book they're called head. So then through Marcos, we find out how the world has come to accept this as a norm. We also find out that there is a black market for human meat that have last name, first name. So basically all the humans that walk amongst each other. We also find out about scavengers. They are people that cannot afford the special meat. So they eat any dead body that has been deemed unconsumable. So those are just the heads that are just thrown out to them, or they'll eat regular humans, or they eat one another. We find out through Marcos that his father is in the late stages of dementia, that him and his wife Cecilia are separated after the death of their infant son. I think the son died of SIDS. We also find out that he's having an affair with a female butcher in town. Then we also find out that his sister lives in the city. She has two twins, a boy and a girl. They are so creepy. And we find out how Marcos really kind of looks down to his sister, and how his sister could be kind of annoying. We also find out that Marcos goes to an abandoned zoo that his father used to take him when he was a child, and which could be very dangerous because there are, like, we are told there are stray dogs there, stray dogs, cats, stray animals there, that he could actually get the virus. Somewhere beginning of the story, or halfway through the beginning, Marcos ends up going to a breeding center, and we actually see how the special head or the special meat is treated through the breeding center. And there was one scene that kind of freaked me out, and that was where Marcos saw a pregnant special meat with no arms and no legs on a metal table, and I was like, oh my god. And then the breeder describes, oh, we have to take off their arms and legs because they tend to slam their stomachs into the bars. And we also find out the special meat, they have their vocal cords removed, so they can't really speak. We also find out from Marcos's job at the slaughterhouse that they actually request leather from the special meat, and it's kind of terrifying. After he goes through the breeding center, because he's the middleman, he goes and makes sure all of the special meat are, top tier for his factory and stuff like that. So then we find out that the owner of the breeding center ends up giving Marcos a first generation pure meat, a female. Marcos just leaves in the bar, and he's like, no, I want to deal with this, because he has been questioning society, he's been questioning his job, he's been questioning the actual norm of the world he lives in. During the time when he is gifted the special meat, we see that he is separated from his wife Cecilia, that his sister has nothing to do with his father's care at all. We also see how his relationship with the female butcher is just purely lust. And during this time, when he goes home, he starts looking at the female that he was gifted. He looks at her and he realizes, hey, she's probably more than just an animal. And he starts developing these feelings with her. And then he does something that is totally illegal. He impregnates her. A few months have passed. He has domesticated the first generation pure head. She lives in his house. She is 8 months pregnant. He has named her Jasmine because she smells like the wild jasmines that he grew up with. And I'm just like, what the hell? And I had two questions. One, why the fuck would you do that if they are considered animals? And two, why didn't the breeding center just genetically breed the first generation pure heads, or the heads, without a uterus? Apparently they don't, because Jasmine is 8 months pregnant. It kind of goes downhill for Marcos. So we see that he has domesticated Jasmine. We see she's 8 months pregnant. We also see that he's not doing well at his job. He has been a little we also see the dark side of legalized cannibalism. He goes to a hunting ground. People will pay to hunt first generation pure heads. But then at the same time, the person that owns that hunting ground, he will allow humans, last name, first name humans, to also be hunted to pay off debts. And that's where we see where a rock star, he was a very popular rock star and tons of debts. He said, yes, we see him be killed, cooked, and eaten by these group of men that look down on everybody but themselves. And we see Marcos actually eat the meat and realize, oh, this meat is delicious since I haven't had it in a while. Then after that, his father actually passes away, and against his sister's wishes, he has the father cremated, and he ends up dumping the ashes at the zoo that his father used to take him. So he ends up going to the farewell party, and he notices there's a lot of people there that he doesn't recognize. His sister is like in hostess mode. And then he ends up going back into her kitchen, and he notices a freezer. And when he opens the freezer, he sees that she had a domesticated head that she has been serving people. And he leaves. He's like, what the fuck? Like, he just leaves. And his sister's like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? But he ignores her and he leaves. So then he ends up going back home, and we see that Jasmine's actually giving birth, and he has no idea what to do. So he calls his wife Cecilia, and he's like, hey, no questions asked. I need you here. I need you now. Of course, her being a wife, being worried about her husband, she ends up going. She's like, what's wrong? She sees Jasmine. She's like, you what? And he's like, that's my son. That's my child. And then I guess she snaps into it, and she ends up helping Jasmine give birth. And we see that Jasmine is trying to reach for a child while Cecilia's holding it. Spoiler alert! Marcos ends up knocking her out and taking her to the barn to slaughter her. And when Cecilia's like, no, why are you doing that? She could give us more children. He says she got the look of being a domesticated animal. And that's where the story ends. So the author of the book, Agustina Bazterrica, is an amazing, phenomenal writer. The way that she describes such simple scenes and puts so much description and emotion behind it. This writer has a knack for making such serious scenes and giving it description, but not over describing. Also, at the same time, they have such a great sense of writing that they don't need to use flowery language at all. I'm the type of reader that when I read something, I visualize a movie. So with this writer's writing, it was just cinematic, if that's a way to put it. Not only that, I was thinking, after I was done reading, I reread certain scenes again. Rereading those scenes, I realized that Marcos has something against women. The way he treats women, the way that he talks about his sister, the way that he kind of is upset about his wife. I mean, his wife lost their son. She is in grief. They're separated. And there's kind of this moment where he thinks about his wife's loss, and he kind of sneers at it. And then the way he treats Jasmine. He treats her like a domesticated animal, but in the end, he's just like, well, she's starting to look like a domesticated animal, so I might as well just slaughter her. And he just uses her for a child. Because we also find out that Cecilia and Marcos have been trying, and it wasn't working. After their son had passed, they wanted to try again to have another baby. It wasn't working. Cecilia's like, I'm sorry, I can't deal with this. I have grief. Goodbye. Like, she went to go stay with her mother. And then while reading that, I realized Cecilia just had her son die. And Marcos already was trying to have a family right after their son died. Like, he didn't give her a chance to breathe and kind of understand her grief and go through with it. He just wanted to have the baby right away. So we see that Marcos didn't really care about his wife's feelings or her grief. Yeah, sure, he was sad about his son dying, but to instantly turn to his wife and be like, hey, let's have another baby right after our son died. Not giving her time to take in a breath and be like, OMG, my baby died. This is what I'm going through. And I could see why she left. Why she decided to stay with her mother, because he was trying to force her into something she didn't want to do. But when I first read about the sister, I kind of saw that the sister was kind of annoying, but then I realized, she's just a housewife. And the way Marcos thinks about his sister and kind of talks down to his sister kind of was getting me upset, because I was like, dude, she's accepted the norm. You, on the other hand, you're dealing with grief. Get done with that grief. Your father is in a hospice. Your son just died. And you're just like, everything's okay. Scream, shout, cry to the fucking heavens. But seriously, thinking about him impregnating the special meat got me thinking, and I was like, why did they not just remove the uterus? Remove the testicles of special meat? Because wouldn't that be easier? there wouldn't be that much problems, because Marcos does talk about how a lot of people force themselves on these special meat and how there are a lot of people that will impregnate special meat. And it's like, well, if the breeding center sees that as a problem, why not just remove the uterus, right? Why not just remove the one thing that's causing humans? Because if humans do breed with a special meat, they are instantly killed and served. They're sold. They're sold with last name, first name. If the breeding center knows that, if the breeding center knows, hey, our top problem right now are people impregnating our special meat, we should remove the uteruses. Right? But they didn't. I mean, well, if the writer did put that in the story, I mean, there wouldn't be a story. So I understand. If I were to rate this book, I would say a 4.5. And the reason being a 4.5 is there were scenes that kind of freaked me out. Like, I didn't want to talk about it, but there's this one scene where he goes to the butcher and they have intimate times, right? On a bloody table surrounded by bloody parts of special meat. And I was grossed out. I was like, ew, that is so unsanitary. That is disgusting. A lot of the scenes also that freaked me out were the description on how they killed the special meat. The scavengers completely freaked me out. Marcos kind of freaked me out because he impregnated a special meat. The sad part was all the descriptions of animal abuse. Honestly, this book was phenomenal. The writing, the pacing, the character, the descriptions without being over described, no flowery language. I love that the book just got straight to the point. It didn't have to go this. It was just like straight to the point. I love that. Would I reread this book? Of course I would read this book. It's actually really good. I liked it. But if you're squeamish and you don't like that kind of stuff, please heed the trigger warnings. Please heed the trigger warnings. That's all I'm saying. Yep. So that is my talk about Tender is the Flesh. I will see you guys later. And I'm going to keep saying this. If you're going to read this book, please heed the trigger warnings. I've put them in front of my video. Heed them, please. And if you have read this book, please leave a comment and tell me what you thought of the ending. I have so much emotions about that ending. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.